quite believe that as a girl who owns 2 Volkswagens, has 4 Volkswagens in the family, and has worked at Volkswagen, I've never actually had an all-electric ID product on the channel, which is madness to me. So why is that? Well, I think myself, like many of you at home, who are enthusiastic about a particular brand, well, we don't like change, we mourn the old products. So when it comes to the new electric products, we can slightly drag our heels, and that's just what I've done. But I think it's about time I checked them out. Hopefully you would have already seen my ID7 review, and if you haven't, I'll click a link somewhere up there for you to press. And now has never been a better time to consider a Volkswagen ID product, because my local dealers in Suffolk and Norfolk, the Marriott Motor Group, have up to £12,000 off of ID products. So if you want to find out a little bit more about that offer, then you can click the link in the description box. But if you want to find out some more about the Volkswagen ID5 and see if I really can be converted to an electric Volkswagen, then please keep watching. And if you like new car reviews and car content, then this is the place to be. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Let's start with the very basics, shall we? What is the ID5? Where does it sit in the all-electric ID range? And who's the target audience? Well, for starters, it sits alongside the ID4 as an SUV offering. It's got a slightly more coupe roofline, which gives it a sportier feel. And both of those cars sit just above the ID3. The ID3 for now is the smallest in the electric lineup, but Volkswagen have announced that they will be releasing the ID2, which should be a slightly smaller and slightly cheaper electric vehicle. There's no ID6 for the UK market, but the ID7 is a slightly longer, larger saloon and estate vehicle. And then right at the top of the lineup, you have the id.buzz, which can be had as either a commercial or as a passenger car. So who is the ID5 for? Well, I think that can be left up to you. It's a very adaptable vehicle. The SUV styling and the slightly larger shape and large boot space means that it's great for families. But it's also a great commuting car because it's very, very comfortable, and it also has a slightly sporty personality if you go for this, which is the GTX version, which I'll talk about a bit more when I drive it. So it is very adaptable in its personality. For me personally, I think it works best for families. With its sleek aerodynamic design and powerful 77 kilowatt-hour battery, this car can go the distance. In fact, it offers an impressive range of a claimed 327 miles on one single charge. This GTX, however, with its dual motor setup, can cover a slightly impacted 314 miles. And that, compared to the rest of the industry, is pretty good. And it isn't all about the size of the battery. Efficiency is key when it comes to maximising your miles and minimalising your costs. The ID5 is pretty good in this department. It can achieve a proven 3.9 miles kilowatt hour. That's what I've been getting, which translates to a real-world range of around 300 miles. Pretty good. So let's talk about charging. It can hit a maximum rate of 135 kilowatts, which means you can go from 10 to 80% charge in about 30 minutes. Pretty speedy, right? Now I know some of its rivals, like the Tesla Model Y, Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Kia EV6 can charge at even higher speeds. But honestly, the chances of finding a charger over 150 kilowatts are pretty rare. Charging at home is done via a Type 2 connector and an onboard charger which has a maximum power of 11 kilowatts. This charges a fully depleted battery back to full in around 8 hours and 15 minutes. However, a free-phase grid connection is needed to achieve this. The majority of homes and charge points currently do not have this connection. In most cases, the maximum charging power will be at 7.4 kilowatts, allowing for a charge time in 12 hours and 15 minutes. As I mentioned, the biggest amount of change that you'll notice between the ID4 and ID5 can be found around the back, as the ID5 has a sloping roofline to give it a sportier coupe look. You also get the addition of a sportier spoiler, and I love these rear 3D lights, although they do come on the ID4 as well. Now with that sloping roofline, it's 25mm shorter compared to the ID4, but they have made it 15mm longer, and by doing that, it hasn't lost out on any boot space. No, in fact, it actually has more boot space, only by 6 litres, but inside here you'll find a whopping 549 litres of space. Talking about not liking change very much, and the interior of the ID5 does feel very different to the standard classic Volkswagens that you may be used to. Now that's good in many reasons, especially with electric cars having an advantage, which is space. There's not quite so many mechanical moving parts, and that means you don't have to have a central drive tunnel, and you can have this area for loads and loads of storage. I really like the way Volkswagen have used this. I actually think it's very, very clever, and that's because it's interchangeable. So you have this section at the front, which is finished in gloss black, which isn't always my favourite, but it can be forgiven because it's at the front of the car, so it's not where you're touching often, so it shouldn't get too many fingerprints on it. But that at the moment has a section with a couple of cup holders. And then behind this, you have a slider, and behind the slider, you'll find your wireless charging. You also have 2 USB charge points and a load of storage. But this is really cool. You can remove items out of this section, and then you can actually completely remove the cup holders and place them in this section instead, making it really adaptable. And then you have some storage up front instead of down in the center console. It's a very small thing, but I quite like the way you can maneuver it and change it to your personal preference. I also like the way that you can use this central part that scrolls forward so that you can tuck everything away and it looks very neat. When it comes to ride and handling, the ID5 delivers exactly what you'd expect. Despite its large wheels, the ride quality actually remains smooth and comfortable. The car maintains good control over body roll even when navigating through faster corners. It is good to note that the ID5 is not designed to be a thrill-seeking, adrenaline-pumping machine, even in this GTX version. Given its target market of families, it prioritises comfort and practicality over sportiness. The maximum power output of the ID5 Pro is 172 horsepower, paired together with 173 pound-feet of torque. The Pro is rear-wheel drive and can accelerate from 0 to 62 in 10.4 seconds, with a top speed of 99 mph. The GTX, however, gets an extra motor, making it all-wheel drive and boasting a power of up to 295 horsepower. Plus, it cuts the 0 to 62 time to just 6.3 seconds and tops up the top speed to 112 mph. Not that you should ever need that. I also like the way the cabin is set up as well. The screen is slightly faced towards you, so it feels driver focused. The steering wheel is really nice, it feels high quality with it being leather wrapped and having the contrasting red stitching because this is the GTX model. You also get leather across the dashboard as well, once again with that contrasting stitching, but you do have more gloss black, which I know a lot of people are not a fan of. One of the things I do like about the ID5 is you get some really nice pull-out armrests, not only for the driver, but also for the passenger. And as you can see, there's so much space between the driver and passenger, so it makes a fantastic road trip car. I also like the way you've got a touch slider to open the sunroof, and it works very well. It feels very intuitive, and it always works every time you press it, which can't always be said for the touchscreen. Now I am going to touch on the touchscreen, although I'm sure this has been covered in many a review, but it isn't the best system. Volkswagen have known this from the very beginning. You see, when the ID3, 4 and 5 were first launched, they had quite a buggy system. It's had a few updates which have made it a lot better, but there is actually a new generation in the ID7 which I tried out, which is even better than this. But to be honest, I think that once you've gotten used to it over a couple of days like I have, it's more than easy to use. The one negative is, of course, in this generation of car, you haven't got backlit sliders for your climate control dial. So this does mean that at night it is quite hard to see that. But what you do get is you get these buttons along the bottom, and these are your shortcuts. So you've got a shortcut to your climate control, and then that brings up the main screen. So I can't really see it being a problem. I really like the smart climate sections. These are to give you shortcuts to things that you may want to use often, including defogging your windows, warming your feet, warming your hands, which I really like. As well, if you don't really like the system, it doesn't matter because it gets Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard. You've got a small touchscreen in front of you, and it sits nicely on the steering wheel. So unlike Peugeot products, which if you move the steering wheel, you can no longer see the dashboard, in the ID products, as you can see, the screen actually moves with the steering wheel. So you can always have a good visualization of that screen at all times. You've also got the gear selector, which is attached to this little dashboard, and I quite like that as well. This has been changed for the ID7, and to be honest, I don't think it needed to change because I quite like it, but they've integrated it into the dashboard instead, and I guess it does feel a little bit cleaner. And there is a very clean vibe in the ID products. Yes, it's different from the old generations of Volkswagens, but it definitely isn't quite as plasticky as some journalists have said. But maybe that comes down to the specification you go for, because this is the GTX model, so it's quite high up. And that means that you've got nice leather seats, you've also got that perforated GTX on the seats, you also get that leather on the dashboard, and when you do go lower down the range, it doesn't feel quite as premium. So it may be worth it to take advantage of those discounts they currently have to go for a higher spec model. In terms of space in the back compared to the ID4, I've still got loads and loads of legroom. It's ample in the back here. And I also love the way that you've got a huge flat floor, so you've got loads of space for even the middle seat passengers' feet. And actually, this middle seat's brilliant, so you could easily sit 3 people along the back of the bench. Now, it is slightly lower in the back compared to the ID4, but as you can see, I've got a few inches of headroom left. I'm around 5'5", so if you're 6 foot, your head might just start to scrape on the ceiling, especially if you lean back. But otherwise, if you're only putting children in the back, they're going to be more than happy. There's ample amounts of space for 3 children in the back. You also get a pull-out armrest, and you get 2 cup holders in there and a little bit of storage in the middle. You also get some through loading as well. So you have a middle section which pulls out, and then that means you can load longer items like skis and golf clubs if you needed to. You also get 2 USB-C charge points in the back here, and you get rear climate as well, which isn't a given in some of its rivals, and I do think it helps give it that premium touch. Otherwise, in the back here though, it does feel a little bit cheap. You've got slightly cheap door cards. This material on the top is really quite hard, although that does mean that it's going to wipe clean, it's going to be easy to clean messes off of, so that's definitely a plus point. But elsewhere, it doesn't feel quite as premium as when you're in the front. Well, I think you'll agree that after spending some real quality time with the ID5, it's a fantastic and very well-rounded electric offering. When it was first released, it was quite expensive, and it didn't really make sense for going for the ID5 over the ID4, or really considering it compared to some of its rivals. But with the huge savings from the Marriott Motor Group, I now think it makes more sense than it ever has. But let me know, what do you think of the ID5? Pop it in the comments down below. Perhaps you own an ID5. What's your favourite feature? But I really hope you have enjoyed the video. If you have, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up. And if you want to see more, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Thanks once again for the Marriott Motor Group for lending me the ID5. And if you did want any more details about their offers, then I'll pop them in the description box. Until next time, guys, see you later.